Real quick before this starts, I just want to let you guys know that I put timestamps in the comment section. It's going to be an easy way for you to get to the specific sections that you care about. So definitely check that out. Let's get into the video.
Hey, what's up, my future friends? This is Kite 080. Today on the show, we have Ronny. He runs Vaporspace StL, which is out in St. Louis. It's a show organization for Vaporwave artists to come out into St. Louis and play some of their music. Today, we're going to be going over 5 topics, which he's going to talk about how you can become an organizer. So, Ronny, if you don't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on Music is the Hang-Up, Kite. I'm super happy to be introducing myself to your fans.
Yeah.
I'm Ronny from Vaporspace StL, and we throw and organize and promote shows in St. Louis. We've been doing it since April of 2019, and we just keep doing it. We kind of can't stop. The more we do it, the better we get.
Yeah, so definitely had to get you in because you've had a lot of artists that a lot of people know, like A Hero, and you've had Fire Tools, and a bunch of other ones that are maybe smaller, but really what you're doing is bringing up Vaporwave in your scene, at least in St. Louis. So the 5 topics that we're going to be talking about today is getting the venue, the sound, picking up the talent, the aesthetic, and then the promotion afterwards. So let's start off with that first one, the venue. How would you describe getting that first space? How do you even find it, and then how do you contact, and then how do you organize it after you have the place?
Sure. Well, I think the venue is one of those bridges that you have to cross first. Where on earth are you going to be able to have this party?
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be local to everybody's individual market. Everybody's market is going to be different. Everybody's market is going to have literally local laws that are going to impact how you can use that space. Alcohol, oddly enough, plays a huge role in music production. You have to understand how alcohol relates to your scene, how the alcohol laws are going to make it so how late you can go, what ages of people you can have through the venue. And at that point, the more you can do to make it available to everybody, that's going to be the better solution. However, you also have to deal with the realities of your market, and states and cities have individual laws that make it so that I can't just say, this is how it's going to be in your town. But what I can say is that bars and restaurants and nightclubs, they exist to put on content. And most of them would like to have more, better, different, fresh content. Sure. And I think that that's what we're offering in Vaporwave right now. And the minute you can convince someone that you can deliver a crowd, there almost ceases to be any reluctance for them to come and be in their space, because that's what their space is for. Their space is for this kind of activity.
You said something in there. If you can convince them that there's going to be a crowd, that's difficult for a lot of this kind of music because, one, most people are already saying, I don't have a scene in my hometown. How did you convince the first venue and get people to come along? Obviously, the promotion part that we'll talk about at the end, but how did you do that on the first call that you did when you brought this up?
Well, on the very first venue, it was a matter of talking to someone whose restaurant I had been in several times.
Okay.
And asking that person, have you ever thought about doing something here in the evening? It turned out that it was a brunch restaurant. They typically closed at 4:00. And her response to me was that they regularly did private events on Friday and Saturday nights. They said, we constantly have bridal showers or, reception dinners or those kinds of things coming through. So for them to be open on that evening was not something that they couldn't see. And we arranged for me to pay a small room fee that was discounted from their normal what they would charge, like if we were going in there to have a dinner, because she said if we just open the bar and serve drinks all night, we'll have that be all for them, and we'll do the rest. Okay. And so it was. I didn't know any. It sounded like a pretty good deal to me. They were going to let me keep 100% of the ticket sales, and they were going to keep 100% of the bar, and that all sounded really fair. I will say I feel like it was kind of a lucky break to work with this person. But I had made a good impression. You know, I was a regular patron of her business, and asked her in a friendly way if she would even be open to this idea, and it turned out that she was.
Perfect. Cool. So now you have venues that you're pretty regular with. Over time, you'll just build up that reputation. You'll know how big the audience normally is going to come in. Most people probably think a concert needs to have 100 people or something in it. What are your numbers?
I would love to get to 100 people. Like 100 people would be great. We've never dipped below having 60 guests at our events.
Okay.
And you know that I'm very proud of that. That took a lot of work to get it to that number. You have to let people know that you are having a show.
Yeah.
And you have to let hundreds and hundreds of people know that you're having a show to get, 50 to 60 folks to come out for music that they haven't heard of, for artists that they might not be familiar with.
Awesome. Well, that's actually a good point to segue. I'm going to skip sound for now, but go into talent. So let's say you've got your venue, at least a place that you think you can do it at. Now you have to have talent to even pitch that to the venue that you're actually going to have someone come up, right? So like, where's that balance of you're going to convince some artist to come to your hometown, at the same time get a venue to host them, but if the person, there's not like that sweet spot yet, that at least in my understanding, how do you get there?
That was the hardest, and really was constantly like, what do I need to have first? Do I need to have a venue confirmed for me to get talent?
Right.
Or do I need to have talent confirmed in order for me to get a venue? And really all you have to do is kind of do them both at the same time. Let everybody know that you are working on it. Like I am working on getting the talent for the show. I am working on getting the venue for the show. And everybody's kind of, oh, I'm interested. And then all of a sudden it all comes together at the last minute and you've got it. It's a nerve-wracking couple of days or several hours as you're matching everything up. And in the beginning, I had a venue, but no talent. And I had to get the venue first because I was like, well, I don't want to call these artists and get them spun up about a show if I don't have a place to put the show.
Right.
But now at this point, there's 3 or 4 venues that will tell me yes. And then there are other venues that maybe I could get into if I can't find a calendar opening or whatever. Yeah. So now I go for my talent first and say, if you're interested in playing on such and such a date, we would like to set up a show for you. And then they tell me what dates work for them, and I go out and I try to find the venues that where we can throw it. So talent or venue first, I don't know if that's like a known struggle, but it was definitely a struggle that we faced in our first several parties.
A question that I have is, all right, you've got the venue, you've got the talent that's saying they're interested enough. Now you're saying you're paying the venue at least with the drinks, best case scenario. That's how they're getting paid. Mm-hmm. Are you paying the talent? And if so, how do you get to that contract with them? Is it a physical contract? Is it just something that you guys shake hands on? You know what I mean?
Well, I am working with artists now, much later in, much longer after we've started. I'm working with artists now who have agents. Okay. And artists who have agents, they require contracts. And artists without agents, you usually can work that out over the internet. You know, it's usually a series of emails where you guys are coming to agreements. I'm not an industry professional. I don't have background in the music industry. People are, tell me, this is the music business, and businesses should be moderated by contracts. And to me, a contract is both a little scary, because you're like, this obligates me to all those things. But it's also really good, clear communication. You kind of know exactly what's expected of you. And I appreciate that.
So with the case of a hero, what was that process like? Just to give us an example of like a real person in our scene.
Sure. He was someone that I had met on Discord, and told him that I liked his album, that I knew he was from Chicago, that I was throwing shows in St. Louis, and that I would like for him, if he could, to come down to St. Louis. And he was very enthusiastic about it, told me right away that he would love to come to St. Louis to play, that he had to work it out with, his family and his people, and make sure that it was going to be something that he could do. He's a younger guy. He would even need
16.
a ride. What's that?
I think he was 16 when I first interviewed him. So,
he's a high school student. So in order to have a high school student make a multiple 100-mile journey from Chicago to St. Louis, I talked to his folks. His folks asked me questions. Is this legit? Are you legit? And I was pretty new to the game as well, so I didn't have like, oh yeah, here's the 15 shows that I've thrown. Instead, It was like, this is our second show. Yeah, we're totally legit. Send your son down to St. Louis, and they did. I met his dad when he dropped him off. He rocked and played the show. He was very excited to do it, and I did pay him. I pay all my artists. That was something. That early on, I did a lot of market research to figure out what goes on in St. Louis, because I didn't know. There is an electronic music scene in St. Louis: dubstep, house music, rhythm, drum and bass, techno. They all exist here in a big way, and I wanted to see, like, are these people getting paid? And in general, I feel like St. Louis does a pretty darn good job saying that artists making art for people get paid. And that seems like not a lot, but they do get paid. And I don't want to, I don't want to give people bar tabs. I don't drink, so I don't want to say, yeah, you're playing for $30 at the bar. Don't be trashed by the time your set comes up. I say you're going to get cash. If you want to spend it at the bar, spend it. But
sure. Sure.
We figured out what scale is. Local artists, if you have them on, they don't break your budget. They participate. They bring friends. You pay them, and it's great. What you can pay your headliner has to depend on how many people are going to come to your show. Mm-hmm. And if you are throwing your first show, you have to set a realistic number that you can anticipate, that you feel like if they don't come, or if half the people come, how much money am I going to lose? How much money can I afford to lose? And we set our budget for our first show and said, if we lost every dollar, and we didn't think we were going to lose every dollar, but if we couldn't recover any of this, we were going to lose several $100s, about $600. And it was like, but if we get 60 people to come through, we're not going to lose. And so that was what we worked towards, and it went great.
Most, at least in our scene with Vaporwave, most of us probably never even played a show before. So the idea of playing a show for the first time is more enticing than the dollar that you're going to receive. So that's another advantage you have by picking up these smaller artists.
Debuting artists is a big part of what I wanted Vaporspace to be about. And not just because I kind of had to be, because there aren't a lot of St. Louis, there weren't very many St. Louis artists at all in this space who had played before. But a debuting artist is a strong artist. They do not have national draw. I can't get somebody in San Diego to be excited necessarily about a St. Louis artist playing for the first time. Although when we had Stack Overflow play, I did hear from a lot of places that they're like, "Oh, Stack Overflow, that he's huge. I can't believe that you got him." But he happens to be local to the Missouri area, and so having him through and having him debut with us was really exciting. But most of the time, one of the benefits that you get from the debuting artist is they are bringing in more friends, maybe than someone who's played 10 to 15 times in the same market, and their friends are like, we came and saw you a bunch of times already.
Sure.
We'll catch it. The debuting artists tend to bring in some of the most locals. So
that's
don't be
definitely
afraid.
another tip.
Don't be afraid to bring on that artist who has never played before. Be ready for some of the growing pains that they're going to have as they're up there working through their sound check or having maybe a technical issue. But still, that debuting artist is a powerful market that helps your show.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect segment to sound. I know that's kind of a general topic. The questions I guess I have on that is your own equipment versus the equipment at the venue. How you're hooking up, especially debuting artists. How do they hook up their kind of stuff? Do you educate them? Do you allow them to come there earlier? And I'll ask a couple more, but go ahead.
Well, it's not me because I quickly realized that there is a lot more to big nightclub sound than there is to your home stereo system. And anybody that's messed with a PA is probably like, yeah, absolutely.
100%.
One of my show throwing partner is Paul, who is Sound Market. And Paul is studying audio engineering and is very talented and capable at sound design, PA assembly, I guess for a lack of a better term, and knowing how to operate big, expensive, loud, electrified equipment. I mean, at some point, these PAs can actually become dangerous because of the amount of electricity just traveling through your stack of speakers. When we did our first 2 shows, we were in a DIY space and had to bring in sound. That was simply a fact. We were not at a nightclub. We were in a restaurant. So we borrowed a PA from a local hardcore band that I was friends with and said, can we use your PA for this event? And they allowed us to do it. To have rented it would be some additional, that'd be an additional cash outlay. So to see if you see what you can borrow, tap into your latent resource network and see if you can borrow that sound if you're in a DIY space.
Yeah.
If you're in a nightclub space, that frees you of all that obligation. You don't have to move the sound equipment. You can use what's there. Sometimes what's there is kind of dodgy, and you have to, there are certain artists that will not have a good time if they play on poor sound equipment. So you have to know, especially when we're dealing with artists that want tremendous bass response, that want their sound to sound correct. This needs to be something that you take seriously.
Right. Okay.
Fortunately, Vaporspace doesn't seem to be full of, or at least none that I've run into so far, high fidelity prima donnas, which apparently that's a big deal in some electronic music circles where sound design is everything to them. And they'll pass on whole cities because they say, well, there's no venue in that space that can create the sound that we're looking for. I haven't run into that. And generally, we use pretty high quality sound equipment in the clubs that we're in. We're in nicer, newer clubs. No, we're in nice clubs that have nicer, newer sound. So with that, we haven't had any issues or complaints. But if you have a dodgy sound system, you're going to want to address that, because if it sounds bad, that's going to become something that people talk about. Like a bunch of trashy noises and pops and that show sounded terrible. That becomes something that your fans go, I'm not sure I want to catch the next one because the last one didn't sound very good. So you've got to address it. You've got to know what you're doing. And to do that, talk to a musician who has experience with a PA. That's about what you need to do is to get it right.
Do you think most venues has someone on hand that like if it's your first time doing this, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You have no clue at all.
That's a good question. Most venues aren't going to let you touch their sound equipment. If they have a multi-$1,000 audio setup inside the space, they probably have someone that they pay to run that whole setup for you. And you're going to pay for it, one way or another. They're either going to recapture the money to pay this sound engineer from the bar, or they're going to charge you for the room and say that, you know, part of what you're paying to be in this room is our sound engineer, Fred, who is going to help you through this process. If you are in a professional space that has a professional sound rig, you're probably going to use theirs, and they're going to help you get it right. Okay. You had asked about artists and how they get set up. That's a pretty important question. I would tell every artist who's looking to play for the first time, you need to think to yourself, what am I going to hand the sound technician and say, here is my signal. You do not want that to be a 5mm plug, which is one of the things that you see every once in a while, where they're like, oh, here's my 5mm plug. That you do not want this to be your master out.
Yeah.
That's bad. If you can have 1/4 inch in stereo, that's good. Yeah. If you can have XLR in stereo, that's even better. RCA is sometimes acceptable, but you can find some clubs that can't make use of your RCA. So think about, with your workflow, what's coming out. The interfaces are an important idea. I've heard them referred to as interfaces, DI boxes, or breakout boxes. Again, I'm not a musician, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know everything about this. But if you are playing live, sending somebody a pair of stereo outs, here's my left channel, here's my right channel, that's a level of professionalism that the artist can bring to the sound check and say, here you go, Mr. Sound Engineer, I know that you wanted this. Here's my left, here's my right, and now you're good to go. It makes things a lot easier. The Scarlett Focusrite appears to be everyone's latest and greatest best friend if you've got a few extra $100 to put into the game.
So most of your artists that came over, are they just playing from their laptop? I know here doesn't do that, but
a laptop plus MIDI controller is a very standard setup, and generally, what is going to happen is the laptop is going to go out via USB to some sort of interface. Okay. And the interface is an additional piece of hardware that is going to take the digital signal from your computer's sound card via as fast a USB as you can make it work. If you can get an interface that will accept USB-C, you're on top right now. And then it's going to turn that digital sound into a pair of analog stereo outs that we can then hand to the sound man. So MIDI controller to control what's on your laptop, and then your audio comes out of your laptop, goes to your interface, and then the audio comes out of the interface and goes to the sound man.
So I think that actually covers the first three. So the last two are the fun part, I think, the aesthetic and promotion. When you say aesthetic, obviously in Vaporwave that has a lot of meanings, but what does that mean for a venue and setting up your shows?
The aesthetic part is something that you want to have invested some time and thought into, because you want your show, your event, to stand out and make itself distinct as not part of, as being its own cultural event that is not part of the dubstep scene, not part of the house scene, not part of the techno scene. You get a feel when you go into the space that you're being in this virtual kind of future world, for lack of a better term. So what can you add to the space? What can you bring to the space that's going to transform that nightclub into something that feels like this mood that we've all created for ourselves online? What kind of decorations can you locate? You got a marble bust lying around, that goes a long way. But you have to put some thought into lighting. You have to put some thought into if you're going to do visuals, because I think that's a future, a big part of what people want to see at electronic music shows today. Is they want to see some sort of video aspect. And
most venues have like a projector anyway. So just hook up another laptop and have something flying in the background. Actually, at every show that I've been to, there's always been a projector, and there's usually like little anime gifs in the background or like aesthetic gifs. It's not even anything hardcore that someone really put together. It's just more of some visual that feels vaporwave, at least in the background while you're up there dancing around.
I absolutely. I mean, I sent a message to El Famoso Demon, who is a YouTuber who creates a lot of aesthetic cut and paste videos, and I sent him an email in my for my first show and said, would it be all right with you if we played some of the YouTube videos that he had put up, if we played them on mute behind our artist performing? And he's like, yeah, you can use any of my stuff for free. He's like, I can't monetize this. I was like, all right, sounds great. So we were, we used El Famoso Demon videos for our first party. And by our second party, we had Fire Tools, and Fire Tools brought through her own video that was actually triggered and synced with her music. So that presented really an immediate technical challenge for us, was how do we allow Fire Tools to control her video from the artist table instead of our previous setup where our video and laptop were just somewhere else in the room just running. So, we solved it. We got it done. Her video and her music just went great together. It was really cool. Awesome. But you've got, visuals really are something that you're going to add to your show. Projectors are cheap. If you've got a laptop, that's great. If you don't have a laptop, you can use an old VCR. A VCR is much cheaper than a laptop. If you can get a VCR and a cool VCR video, do that. And, write whoever's video. If you're going to use a cool new Vaporwave VHS tape, you should ask permission to do that. Can I play your video on mute at my show? And hopefully people will say yes, because you're really just trying to use art that they created to create your vibe. They might say no. It's absolutely art that they used and they're not there. So you got to ask. But if anybody needs aesthetic videos, I know a guy. Let me know. We'll help you. We'll help you get a aesthetic VHS tape.
Awesome. And then one more thing I'd like to add is at the London show, Groove Horizons, Strawberry Station and I went to some home shop and bought like some ferns or something that kind of looked like palm trees. And we just put two of them right on both corners. And it really did. That's all we brought. And then we had the projectors. And that really does, two flowers or two plants really build an aesthetic. And it can be as simple as paying $25.
Plants, crystals, incense, anything. One of the things that I see in St. Louis, I started to kind of implement, is this idea that the artist's table, make it an altar to sound. Put decorations and beautiful aesthetic things that are added to the table, because really artist gear looks cool, first of all. So people are going to look at the artist gear. They want to see, what are they using? Is it covered in a bunch of lights? What does it look like? Do they have knobs? Do they have big pads? People want to see your MIDI controller. They're going to come up and look at it. Make that table an exciting thing to look at. It's the centerpiece of your show. It can be the area where you focus your decorations. Focus your decorations on making that artist spot, a cool place to look at and a cool place to focus your attention.
Yeah, great. Perfect. So now that we've got pretty much all the venue side, now you got to get people to come to your shows. And one thing that I think that you do a great job of, and I really appreciate you giving me some of, your flyers. Very simple cardstock flyers, all the information on there. Go ahead and let us know what you're doing and how it's worked for you.
I was inspired to do flyers by my own experience in the St. Louis rave scene in the 90s. In the St. Louis rave scene in the 90s, the internet was nothing like it is now. And so the primary way that you found out about cool parties was someone would hand you a flyer for the next cool party as you were leaving the cool party you were just at. So in my mind, I was like, well, that's how I'm going to do it, because I didn't have a bunch of local followers on Facebook or on Twitter. I was plugged into Vapor Twitter, but I was like, man, there can't be 100 St. Louisans on this Vapor Twitter. So I need to reach St. Louis. The people who go to shows in your city, whatever shows they go to, are the people who are going to go to your shows. People who go to shows go to shows. So you need to get flyers and go to shows. And then when people are leaving those shows, you need to hand them that flyer and say, I'm having a Vaporwave or a Future Funk show next Friday at Pop's Blue Moon. Come party with me. And I do hand-to-hand flyering. I stand outside of shows. I did it last night. I'm going to do it again tonight. I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And I stand outside of shows. And I get that this is not for everybody.
Sure.
but
it's a lot of work.
But you stand out, and people with stars in their eyes and various forms of inebriated stumble out of the show, and you hand them a flyer. And you project everything that you want to project into that interaction, because this could be the only chance that you get. And you say, Vaporwave Future Funk Party next Saturday, Pop's Blue Moon, come party with me. And you say that over and over. And some people take your flyer, some people tell you to piss off, and you just keep handing them out. And you just keep smiling, and you try to dress fresh, you try to look cool, like you just look like you're having a good time. And also, in addition to the people who tell you to piss off, you are going to give people flyers that go, Vaporwave? No way! I didn't even know it was in the city. No, like, for real? Oh shit, Vape Error? Yeah!
Yeah.
And, dude, one of those takes care of everything else. And I drop a few flyers in some select places. I drop them at record stores. I'll put a stack of 10 or 15.
Sure.
I have done game stores. I don't know how many people come from the game stores, but board game stores, video game stores, I'll drop 10 or 15 there. I'm always looking.
Shops have like a board up, like a community board too. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. Think about where the colleges are in your city, because your target market is absolutely the 18 to 25-year-old market. And a lot of them are going to be in colleges, and people who are in colleges tend to walk out and be around colleges. So if you can get into that cool college neighborhood, or that strip where everybody in college goes to buy their vape juice or eat lunch or whatever the hell they're doing, that's a great place to get those flyers up, so that way you can get into this market. Because the college itself is really going to restrict your access, or they're really going to restrict my access. If you go to college, then don't be afraid. They're not going to expel you. Put those flyers up all over. They want that tuition money. But they do not let me, who does not go to that college, be on the college and distribute my stuff. Like I'm solicitor.
Yeah, I think that covers at least the 5 steps to get you introduced to the whole process. Anything else you want to add real quick? And then we'll let you talk about what's coming up in the future.
I would like to say that it can be a lot of fun. It can take a lot of energy, and it can be a little stressful from time to time. But when you are actually throwing your event and seeing this event be created, it's about the most fun I know how to have at a show. And I've been going to lots of shows for a long, long time. But when you are throwing a show and you're like, oh man, this is all happening because we organized this and we brought it together, and look at all these people having fun. There's nothing like it. And and I'm hooked. Like, I'm literally like, one day I'm gonna have to stop this, and I'm gonna go through withdrawal, and I'm gonna be all sad and everything. But it's an addictive rush to throw a show and see something like this get created.
That's awesome. Well, I can definitely tell that you're super passionate about it, and I'm sure the scene's super appreciative of everything. So thanks for telling us all that information.
I'm really glad I get to participate. Like, more than anything else, it's like, it's so DIY, and it's so cool, and everybody putting the energy into it seems like we're all writing our own map. So I was like, maybe I can be part of this. Maybe how can I contribute? And this has been a great way to do it. It really has. And then on Friday, March 6th, we are very excited to host Uniwa from Little Rock, Arkansas. He is beginning his Singularity tour, and we have a tremendous future funk lineup scheduled for Uniwa on that Friday. We've got Bonus Points from St. Louis, who does a great job with kind of a chilled out chill hop sort of vibe. Then we have Trans World Airlines, who DJs classic Vaporwave. And then we have Dewey, who is going to debut for Vaporspace StL at that show. And it's just it's going to be great. Again, within that 1 year time frame. In 11 months, we were able to go from Uniwa can't make your show to, Uniwa's going to be there. So,
yeah. Wow,
to the top.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any last words?
None. No last word.
I definitely want to say, if you're out in St. Louis or the surrounding area, definitely go check out Vaporspace StL. Actually, what does the STL stand for? That's something I want to
St. Louis. It's ST is the ST is Saint, L is Louis.
All right. I'm not that smart yet.
You might edit that out.
Yeah, so definitely check it out. I hung out with you at 100% Electronica, and you're a crazy dancer. Don't stop the entire time. So if you're looking for someone to party with that's super hardcore, I definitely recommend going to Ronny's shows because I know they're going to be incredible. All right. Thanks, man, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kai. Mwah.
All right. I'll see you later.